Let's pray together. Father, thank you for the privilege that we have to come before you tonight. We thank you for the privilege that we have to serve our community and to make decisions that would benefit. And Lord, I pray that you'd give us wisdom as we do that, and that collectively we can be of one mind and in a body. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Joyce.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Leyland.
Present.
Commissioner Lawrence.
Present.
Commissioner Locke. Here. Chair Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Howie.
Present.
Commissioner Barrera.
Present.
Commissioner Marquetti.
Here.
And Commissioner Lee.
Here. All right. Before we open the floor for public comment, we don't have anything on there for elected officials, so we're going to do everybody the same across the board. Remember, there's no attacking any one person. You cuss us out in general, or if you need more time, we'll give you 3 minutes. I'll stop you at that mark. Ask the board if there's no problem for that. Then if they don't object, then we'll continue on. We'll try to keep it in order, all right? So I'll open the floor for public comment.
Hello, my name is Carrie Lee, and not only am I a county employee, but the CCIEA president. So first, I would like to thank you for your dedication to this board. According to Lord Acton, power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Therefore, I do agree with checks and balances when applied with integrity. The FOC voluntarily gave up one position within the office to promote a more frugal budget. Now, there is potential to eliminate additional jobs in the FOC and the entire courts. The loss of a position has impacted our entire department as we navigate. Now there's a potential to eliminate additional jobs in the FOC and the entire courts. The loss of a position has impacted our entire department as we navigate our responsibilities and try to divide the work of one open job and one temporarily eliminated position. If there are additional cuts, the fear of burnout and inability to properly prioritize and feelings of being overwhelmed will surely come, as there is a limit to how much extra work an individual can absorb physically, mentally, and emotionally. The FOC and courts have worked tirelessly to cultivate a healthy and conducive environment where we all work harmoniously and are willing to stop our work to assist others when needed to ensure prompt service for our children and families, and custodial parents or guardians do not face delays in getting child support. Please consider the weight employees will carry with an overwhelming workload and how the citizens we serve will suffer due to longer waiting processing time. An ideal outcome is working on this next year so your elects can adequately create a strategic plan with the board. If there's no way to reduce the budget except to cut employees, I request giving employees a 60 to 90-day notice to obtain gainful employment to soften the effects of this life-changing decision. I ask you treat us how you want to be treated. As human beings, we depend on our wages and benefits to survive. I know that my family's life, finances, and well-being depends on it, literally. Cass County is a fantastic place to work. We have exceptional benefits and our ever-improving positive office culture when we are not in fear of losing our jobs. We are you guys' employees, and you have the power to eliminate this fear from our lives. Ruling with fear and intimidation comes with risks and discredits the foundation of workplace integrity. I want to express the pride, joy, and hope that enveloped employees with the arrival of new commissioners. Please remember that if a drastic cut is not a financial necessity, not only does this hope and joy diminish, but the hardship employees will face from losing their job could devastate their world for years to come. Therefore, please pass the budget recommended by your administrator that allows us employees to keep our positions.
Thanks.
Good evening, Carol Beeler. The courts want to acknowledge all of the hard work put into the fiscal year 24 budgeting process. During the budgeting season, there has repeatedly been statements that there was not a desire to cut positions, yet here we are looking at 11 positions cut countywide, 5 for the courts, 6 if you count the ones that we already agreed not to fill. The BOC has paid professionals who have put forth an administration recommended budget. I'm unclear as to why the BOC would not have confidence in and support the recommendation being made by our county administration team, which uses less projected fund balance than the fiscal year 23 budget. Since I work in the justice system providing mandated services, much of which supports safety and lawfulness in our community, the balanced budget option, quote unquote, cuts are very concerning. Just looking at the numbers, the difference in the general fund budget for the courts requires the courts to reduce court budgets an additional 30% to get the projected use of fund balance to zero, despite courts only accounting for 18% of the general fund expenditures, not including our revenues and grants, based on the numbers I've been given. This is in addition to cuts the courts have already worked to achieve of over $350,000, including cutting a full-time position at the time of our first budget meeting. As I advocated for at the last COW, I believe electeds and department heads need to sit down with county administration and review all positions and brainstorm ideas for cross-training, consolidation, etc. And if our goal is to reduce our position counts by a specific number, that we accomplish this together, because there's a lot of us who don't know about individual service deliveries being done by others of us, and our citizens count on delivery of these services. We should prioritize regular time to meet on this, since we are all working elected officials, with scheduling done in advance to facilitate maximum participation. It's unclear from the balanced budget option, quote unquote, as to whether the court operations will be impacted in a way that we cannot carry out all of our constitutionally mandated functions. Additionally, it's unclear the legal liability and costs we may be opening ourselves up to, since there has not been formal written notice given to the unions of particular positions that may be cut as required by contract. And if there are legal challenges to staffing cuts, there will be costs of attorney fees and time to the county. By law, we have to adopt a balanced budget every year, and we have done so. We are not borrowing money to run our departments. We are not operating in a deficit. The administration recommended budget runs a tight ship and is the balanced budget we are requesting you to adopt. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Good evening, Stacy Repple from the District Court. So I'm going to focus on my budget, and my budget is a little over $1 million. If I look at the balanced budget amount, it's recommending a cut of around $110,000. So that's about 10% of my budget. So if I look at the administration's request, that's about a $40,000 drop, which we can absorb. That's some of the user fees that's going away, so that's a big savings to the county. Another big chunk is training. We can see if we can handle that. There is requirements by the state that the magistrates and the judges have mandatory training, and not all of that can be by Zoom to save money online. So we can see if we can live with that. But the balanced budget, the difference is $66,000, and that equates to a position that I have open right now. I had a person leave in June, so we've been without a collections clerk since June. And the $66,000 is that person's wages and those fringes. So if the board goes with the balanced budget and we eliminate a collections clerk, there's consequences to that. So if I give you my figures, as far as tax garnishments, last year we collected $13,000 by sending to the state of Michigan requests to garnish income tax returns. And, those don't do themselves. They don't report themselves. We have to do that. So that's $13,000 just last year. I think this year we're around $8,000. If I look at what we collected, so we've been without that collections clerk with that position vacant for July. If I look at July of last year and compare it to July of this year, there's a $12,000 difference of what's collected based on the position being empty. So if the board does go with the balanced budget, obviously you have the power to make that decision, but there's consequences to that. It would now be non-funded, so I'd be telling my staff, when you get a chance, send out an invoice, see if a defendant will pay some money. So if you do go with that balanced budget, understand when I order a defendant to pay $300 or $600 or $1,000, I say go see the collections clerk for that payment plan. I will still say that. We don't have a collections clerk. I'll say go see a clerk and talk about how you're going to pay that. But there'll be nobody following up on those invoices and setting those for hearings with me about how come you haven't paid. So who does that affect? Some of the monies I assess go to the state, some go to the county, some go to the townships or the cities, the libraries. If it's a conservation ticket, there's monies that go to that. So that is your community. So understand if you do go with the balanced budget, and like I said, it is your decision to make, that will affect other areas, and it is your county. So I'm asking you to not do that for the district court, and I'll let the other department heads talk about their budget, but I ask that you not eliminate that position. Any questions?
We really can't have the back and forth
Okay.
on public comment, man.
Okay, that'll work.
'Cause that'll start something.
Okay.
And good to see all of you again tonight, and I know, as the judges have mentioned, you've all worked very hard on this. I know that it's a conscientious group that wants to do the right thing, and we've had some discussions on this before, and I think I want to pick up a little bit on what was talked about a little bit last week, but also, I really think it's important to use the proper terminology. There are three budgets. There's a budget one, which was the original one, then there's one that admin suggested, and then there's the third budget. All three of them, by law, are balanced budgets. And we cannot lose sight of that, because I know that that's the terminology, and I think there's some concern of the commissioners. They want to have a balanced budget. Each one of them, by law, is a balanced budget. Because again, a balanced budget is discussed last week, and I provided that site again. I appreciate Judge Beeler for working on that too, and I'll get that to you again as well. But it says that by state law, by law, when considering whether or not what your budget is and whether it's balanced, you have to consider the unencumbered balance in county revenue, or county funds. And as we know, and again, I'm going from memory a little bit, but that's around $9 million right now. And certainly, budget one, budget two, and budget three, none of them come close to depleting that. Certainly, there is some going into those, and that happens about once every 10 years. And again, so I think it's important, and I just mentioned again, too, I don't say this for self-aggrandizement, but it's just a reality. I've been doing this for 20 years. And I've seen us go through these cycles before and so forth. And these things, these blips happen on occasion, but they're blips. And this was something, again, that was predicted by Administrator's Office. They said, when we went from the DB to the DC, we're going to have a blip for 2 or 3 years. And what is an unencumbered balance, or sometimes called more commonly a rainy day fund? It's 4 times such as this. So we remain balanced. The balance in the unencumbered amount is just not going to be quite as much potentially. We could, for instance, if we do many years, we could certainly not touch that at all. That is a possibility in all three of those budgets. So again, let's make sure we use the proper terminology, because each of these three budgets are balanced. In regard to just a few other comments in regard to this, I think it's also important to keep in mind we've got to provide, we shouldn't panic, and we shouldn't do draconian, drastic things when, again, we've got a balanced budget in all three of these things. And I think number one is still the one to go with. You may decide number two, but I think number three is just wrong. And again, because one of the core responsibilities that you have as commissioners, and we all have, is to provide core services to our public. And we're flirting dangerously with that, how much time is this, Jeremiah?
15.
Okay, with that already. Because again, I can tell you, even if we go with budget number two, I will have to cut some services and child support because I just will physically not have the people to get that done anymore. And that means parents don't get their monies, the county doesn't get their money and so forth. So bottom line, I think that the suggestion, and I appreciate just another 10 seconds, the suggestion that we don't panic this year, let's go through it, let's go do something reasonable, and start in March, like we said, and let's go through this in detail. Some of the things we just haven't done, not because of any ill intent, but just because I think there's a lot of new aspect of this. So, I thank you for your work and so forth, and I just say, let's not panic. Let's go with 1 or 2. Thank you.
Thanks, Beck. Who's next? There we are.
Sorry, I don't want to step on anybody's toes.
There are a few commissioners and members of the public who may not know me, so I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Raven Bakeman. I'm a resident of the city of Dowagiac and deputy friend of the court. My husband Pat and I own Bakeman Barbers in Dowagiac. We are the parents of 3 children, Amelia 16, Mallory 14, and John 9. Pat is a part of the city government and a founding member of the Young Professionals of the Greater Dowagiac area. He's also been doing the play-by-plays for Dowagiac's varsity football games for about 18 years now. That's why he's not here. We have a game tonight. I am on the Beckwith Theater Company Board of Directors and presently the secretary for the MMC competitive dance team at Miss Michelle and Company, and have been a costumer for Dowagiac Drama for the last 2 years. I've worked for Cass County for almost 18 years. I started working for Barb Runyon, formerly Wilson, in the clerk register's office as part-time temporary help. I worked in district court as the traffic clerk for about 4 years before moving to Prosecutor Fitz's office, where I started as a legal secretary in the child support division and then eventually was promoted to office manager. I'm now deputy friend of the court. Sorry, I'm forgetting to breathe. I mention all of this only because I want to make sure that all of you know that my family and I are dedicated to serving Cass County, and I bring this dedication to work every day. I never make statements without the consideration of what's in the best interest for our community as a whole, and I wouldn't be saying anything publicly unless I felt it was important and unless I was passionate about it. I've helped with budget preparation both in the prosecutor's office and now in the friend of the court. From experience, I can tell you that drastically cutting grant-funded line items specifically doesn't make sense. Not only do you have a much lower budget for those positions, equipment, supplies, trainings, books, etc., but you also decrease our revenue line items because there's less to be reimbursed. There are line items in the balanced the third budget proposal that are 100% reimbursed in the prosecutor's office, so they cost the county nothing, and 66% reimbursed in both the front of the court and prosecutor's offices, so we only pay a third for those services that we provide. The services provided are for victims, families, and children in this community that we all live in. Not only would we be losing funding, but some of these grants also require trainings that with that third budget option, we would no longer be able to afford. I am very proud of the work that we do here. I enjoy being engaged in the community we all serve. I genuinely feel that we make a positive difference here and are a good team. What is discouraging to myself and others right now is the possibility of people losing their jobs due to severe budget cuts and not being able to provide those services. I don't think the proposed third option for the balanced budget is a good idea, and I urge you to choose a different solution, a solution that we can all work with, literally. A solution that our administration team worked very hard on with our elected officials and department heads to ensure that everyone keeps their jobs and continue to serve our community. Thank you all so much.
Right on time. Didn't have to give you any hand signals. Before the next person goes up, I just want to, for the record, there's been a couple people that have said, but option 1, 2, or 3. So to be clear, option 1, as far as I'm concerned, would be the one that Matt presented us, the administration, right?
No.
Or how
In that
what?
context, it'd be the department requested budget.
That one?
Number 2 would be the administrator's recommended budget.
Then number 3,
would be the.
okay.
balance.
So maybe I'm the
Essentially,
one that
no
had
fund
messed
balance
up.
allocation.
Got it. All right, so now that everybody's on the same page, yeah, all right, got it. Sheriff. I started your time like 20 seconds ago.
Awesome. Remember what you commented on earlier this evening, there, Chair.
Right,
So-
yes, sir, yes, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I just want to share a couple things, though. Today I was at the City of Dowagiac where they had the dedication of the George Grady Police Department, which was a great experience, and it was a great presentation. If you ever get a chance, go check it out. George Grady was the first black police chief in the nation, and it was in Dowagiac in 1964 to 1974. There was a sheriff before him, an African-American sheriff, but today it was made clear that a police chief is different than a sheriff, because we all know sheriffs are much better. So anyway, I'm glad you clarified that 1, 2, and 3, because as the prosecutor stated, all 3 are balanced budget by the state law definition. Use of fund balance is an option. And guess what? For the last 13 years, you've used the fund balance, and for the last 13 years, only once was it used. Now, that's a pretty good record. We've talked about it many times. We've presented it to you many times that the fund balance has gone from $4 million in 2013 to $8-9 million today. That is a healthy fund balance. We should all be proud. It's hard work by administration. It's hard work by the elected officials and department heads not to spend every single dime that we're awarded to make sure that we stay under our budgets. Sometimes there's emergencies that come up, but we have to be aware of that. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about this. $8 million or lay off people. That's what you're looking at. In my office, there's a cut to the jail. That's currently a vacancy. I'll admit that. That's if it's a corrections officer's position, it is a vacancy. If it's not a corrections officer's position, then it will be a layoff. On the road patrol, there's one cut. I currently have 2 unfunded general fund, or unfilled general fund positions. I know I've talked to you many times about having 7 vacancies or 4 vacancies, but of those, 2 of those are general fund, meaning it affects the general fund budget. The other positions are contract positions. I currently don't fill a position with the Marcellus Schools. I don't fill one with Silver Creek Township. So those are the positions that are vacant. But other than that, and I have one person that just entered the academy this past Monday, and we're hoping to reduce that down to 1. But we are looking forward to putting somebody else through the academy this next year. So when we talk about cuts, a lot of people don't realize that Sheriff's Office in 2003 had 41 FTEs on the Road Patrol Division. 41 FTEs, that means full-time equivalents, if you weren't familiar. Now we have less than 30. So we've suffered our cuts over the years. Some of those have been from grants, some of those have been from other projects that no longer continued, but our office has shrunk due to budget cuts and other reasons. The jail, however, has 23 funded positions that we have to maintain according to the state's recommendations. 23 positions to staff the jail 24/7. So let me ask you, how would you like working in the jail watching 100 inmates and there's only 3 of you? Because that's what we're doing today. We're not overstaffed in the jail. We have 3 people watching the jail, 4, but if somebody takes vacation or something, 3 people are left from 11 at night to 7 in the morning. And then there's 6 in the morning because it's first shift that comes in. So be aware of that we're not fat in the jail area. That being said, one of the things I noticed when I went through the budget, but it actually had to be brought to my attention by a commissioner before I noticed it, is that in the option 3, there's $500,000 being transferred from the Drug Enforcement Fund to I don't know where, because nobody's talked to me about it. And I manage a drug enforcement fund, and that's a lot of money not to have that conversation. So someday I'd like to have that conversation to see where that money's going to. But like everybody else, I really recommend that you go with the administrator's recommended budget. That's what you pay them for, and that's what you have your administration to help you guide through these times. Does anybody want me to continue on for more than 3 minutes?
That's my question.
All right. Very good.
Thanks, sir. Yes, ma'am. You don't have to go up there. You're right here already. It's okay? All right.
My name is Larry Davis. I'm a supervisor for Valenia Township. I'm here just to ask for support and help about the ambulance service business, because we do not have no ambulance service in Cass County, and all of our residents need it. So that's what I'm here for. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Now, ma'am, I didn't call him ma'am, I called her ma'am.
It's okay. Thank you. So I am here after attending a 4-day intense election training with my fellow county clerks, and I learned that instead of giving official allocations, the state is making available $30 million in grant funding for early voting. And so in light of the budgetary issues, I am making a pledge to all of you to be as fiscally responsible as I possibly can. I think administration knows that I'm really good and I try not to waste money at all. With that, I plan to run early voting for the entire county. I'm gonna do it as minimally financially impactful to the county as possible. By doing so, I'm gonna make myself as the chief election official for early voting, so that means we don't have to pay an outsider for that. Fortunately, Bob Thompson of the Road Commission is gonna allow us to use his facility at no cost, which is wonderful. And I am gonna go for all of the funding, grant funding through the state as possible. So I'm not gonna ask for any money at this point in time. I think we can also try to contract a little bit with the townships, get a little bit of money. I'm gonna sit down with them, meet with them now that I've come back. So I just wanted to present that to the board because I know it's been a concern, because we know they're projecting $500,000 because of all of the equipment and software we have to purchase. So I wanted to announce that to alleviate your concerns over the budget. But I will keep you updated on everything else. And if I may put on my other hat as a resident of Cass County, if that's okay.
There we go.
So pretend that I'm just Cass County citizen. I wasn't gonna say anything, but after Sheriff Banky spoke on law enforcement, everyone knows that I am the wife of a police officer. And I see and hear a little bit more than the regular residents. And I know that we have issues with a lack of police officers. And we have issues here in Cass County. For those of you that were board members a couple of years ago, we had law enforcement officers that stood at that podium and warned us of what would happen if MERS was taken. And every single one of those officers are no longer with Cass County. What they predicted would occur is occurring. We have a lack of officers and we have long wait times. If you do not have a scanner to listen to what's happening, I challenge you to do so. It is devastating. I pray that none of you ever have to call for help. If it's an emergency, you may have a very long wait time. I'm not talking about cuts, but I'm talking about taking care of our officers. I do know our sheriff has reached out saying that we need to look at taking care of our officers. Onto a township, good for you guys, did give your officers a raise, which retained your officers. Good for the city of Dowagiac, just gave your officers a huge bump, so you will be okay. But I can tell you the county is in trouble. So the county needs to sit down and look at retaining current officers and attracting new officers, especially in light of the ambulance problem, because what happens is our officers are the first ones to handle CPR, do the AEDs, they're the first ones on the scenes. And I hear this from my husband. And when we watch On Patrol Live, because that's our excitement, he watches the screen and he sees multiple officers responding, and I hear him say, boy, wouldn't that be nice? I can't imagine what it would be like to have more than one officer respond to a scene. And it makes me sad because we don't have that here. And it's competitive, and we need to be competitive, and I think our public deserves it, and I just hope you keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Lynn Shantz, and I don't know last week when I was here if all of you could see the question that was asked to the lady from Market Van Buren. I was the one that asked the question why Cassopolis was not in on the first pick, not Cassopolis, but Cass County, but then Cass County was picked on the second pick for this grant money. And I was told because of the rural, they got looking at all the rural areas. Well, I will tell you, I married a farmer 52 years ago. And we don't want Market Van Buren anywhere near our rural communities at all. And if any of you board members, if you cherish your farms, if you cherish your community, you will vote no on that. I know it's looking good for some people because, yes, it will have affordable housing. But when you look at affordable housing, then what are you going to have come in? Well, if anybody's done any research on Agenda 2030, you will find out that they're trying to get in these 15-minute smart cities, which they're also now calling them walk-around cities. Your walk-around cities, they want to have all of these areas within a quarter to a half mile to where you can walk. So if you can walk to all these places, you're not going to need cars. So therefore, okay, we don't have cars, so what's the government trying to do? Oh, we have to go to the battery charger cars, right? Well, then eventually there's not going to be any cars at all because they're trying to do away with our petroleum. But I'm just telling you, this is where this is going. And you really need to get online. You need to do your own research. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research and get online and start looking at these smart cities. Because some of the research I did over the weekend, I found out in 2009, Edwardsburg, Onto Township and Edwardsburg signed some kind of a pact to have a walk-around city. And that's why the library is going to go in the position in Edwardsburg where it's at, the new library, because the library, the school, the post office is all within a half mile of each other. So then across the street, there is a person that's been after this since last October that keeps going onto a township to the meetings, to the zoning, and he's trying to get zoning changed because he wants to put 200-unit apartments, condos, whatever in there. Plus, he also wants to have businesses in there, drive-through businesses. What kind of businesses? We don't know. He hasn't told anybody. All of these, he's not came up with an MDOT survey yet. Now, mind you, this has been going on since last October. They've also been asking for these other surveys from him, and the comment is, well, the person that's doing the surveys, he's just really busy, and we'll have it come October. So this has gone on a whole year. So as I'm investigating and searching into this, I'm finding out that he could get up to $100 million grant. But he did tell the township that it would cost him $50 million. So, when you start looking at this Market Van Buren, this is where basically this stuff is coming from.
Ms. Shantz,
Yes.
that's time.
Oh, shoot. Thank you.
All right, ready?
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right, good evening. My name is Sarah Matthews. I am the Circuit Probate Family Court Administrator, friend of the court director. I serve as a referee. I'm sworn in as a deputy clerk to supervise the clerk file room, and I maintain certifications to serve as a non-based system administrator for the courts. So I get it. We're a small county, and sometimes we combine positions to save money, and people wear multiple hats. Now's not the time that we need to do that to other employees and eliminate positions and combine jobs. I've told the commissioners before in a letter that I've sent to some of you who visited that there are over 350 definitions of leadership, and the experts don't agree on one, because leadership always changes. It depends on the circumstances, it depends on what you're doing and what you're faced with. One definition that I think is relevant this evening comes from Peter Drucker, who says management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. There are 3 budgets that have been presented to you, and we've numbered them 1, 2, and 3. All 3 fall in the definition of management. They are budgets that are technically done right. right? They have accounting principles, the math is right, they're in BSNA, they've been reviewed. But the task before you this evening is not to manage and do things right. The task before you is to go beyond management, to be leaders for the community and the employees that you serve. This means not just doing things right, but the right things for all involved. Administrator Newton has presented a budget that allows employees to keep their jobs. It is a balanced budget under the law. It allows critical mandated services to be provided. It also provides your elected officials and department heads longer to talk if you do want to continue to decrease spending, so we can consider union contracts and other things. This is the right budget to pick, the budget that has been presented by Administrator Newton, what we call number 2, right? The number 2 budget. It's the right budget to do leadership for our county. Your elected officials this evening have voiced their support for this, as well as the employees that have spoke. I urge you to go beyond simple management this evening and lead as you've been called to do for this community. Do the right thing, adopt the budget that saves employees' jobs, allows the courts and other departments to provide the mandated services that we are all here to provide, no matter how many hats we wear.
Thank you.
Quickly, board members, I want to flip to the other side of this equation for a minute. As your drain commissioner, I'm not a revenue generator for this county, but I do see what's going on in this county, and I get to be involved in those intimate conversations. And there are some good things going out there that eventually are going to pay dividends to this county. Onto a township, currently has a subdivision going in that the state of Michigan's holding up for reasons not determined, so I'm going to see if I can assist in that. Onto a township is also working through adopting the stormwater standards that this board approved in 2012. Milton Township, I recently had an engineering firm reach out to me. When you, just to give an update, since Bob Thompson isn't here, the concrete's being poured today on the new roundabout. And when that's open, I invite you to drive through there and take a look at that development that went in on the east side of Gulman Road, where they took these homes in that wooded area. These are not inexpensive homes. There is demand for these homes. Most of those homes are sold before they even begin construction. So when I look out, I see good things. And anytime you're working on a budget, you also have to look at the revenue side. I can't provide that revenue for you because I'm not a revenue generator for you. But what I can tell you is, from what I see, good things are happening. The bottom's not falling out here. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Going once, twice. Floor is now closed for public comment. Commissioner
Chair, I
Laird.
move we approve the agenda as written.
Second. We have a motion on the floor and support. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. No recognitions. Thank God, no presentation. Y'all can blame me for making the time shorter for that. Got no unfinished business. New business. Number A is M 12823. At the pleasure of the board.
I so move.
Second.
Hmm?
We're voting on this right now?
Yes, ma'am. So there's a motion and a second on the floor, so I can
To
open up for
approve it?
discussion now.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, the discussion is, let me start out saying, when I was campaigning for commissioner, my stance was, my background is manufacturing, and I'm all in favor of bringing business into Cass County, manufacturing, and getting the trades back. And along with that, we'll have people coming in, and we need housing. But I don't think we need to spend the money on this analysis, because my understanding is a couple years ago, the commissioners did an analysis already. Nothing was done with it, and there was a presentation, but now I guess the village and the land bank is already utilizing the housing analysis. Do you know anything about
The only
that,
analysis
Roseanne?
I've seen was for senior housing for a future project for the medical care facility property.
Okay.
That's the only housing study that I've seen in my time.
Yeah.
We're not spending any money, and just at no
Well-
cost to the county.
I just don't see the need for this because there, you know, the village is already working on it and the land bank. So why even go through the process of this?
Is the village and the land bank gonna take care of people in Marcellus or people in Union?
What village are we talking about?
Cassopolis. I don't know about them.
Then that's a hard
But,
question not to have
you know,
answers to. if
the-
we're not-
well,
not-
but the whole thing is, what they're talking about is possibly 200 tiny homes. And if we're bringing, we want to bring business in and bring people here to work, I mean, would you come to Cass County only to live in a tiny house?
Who's
May
projecting
I,
tiny
Oh,
homes?
hold on.
I use
Hold
that
on.
as a poor
Hold
example,
on.
excuse me.
I'll call on
Who's
you.
projecting tiny homes?
It's on Market Van Buren's paperwork that was brought out. Plus, you know, I also stated when I was campaigning that I am in favor of this with respect and responsible land usage. In fact, I'm going to a meeting after this for a group of Ontowa Township residents that are really, really upset about this because one of these cities is going in to Ontowa. It's going across the school where my grandchildren go to school. And if they deem it affordable, then that makes me think, well, is it government subsidized? And we as taxpayers, are we gonna pay for their taxes then? So, I'm not in favor of this, and there is a group that is growing in Ontowa that is not in favor of this city coming in. It's gonna be self-contained, like, Ms. Shantz had talked about. Yes, it will be self-contained. And what are the ramifications of this? Is it gonna hurt the city of Edwardsburg? So, I am not in favor of this at all.
All right. Did you have a comment, Roseanne?
I'm well aware of it. I'm well aware that there is a person who has bought property but I know nothing about him bringing in a 15-minute city or tiny homes. In fact, this isn't the first time I've heard it. And when I did hear it, I went to the Ontowa Township zoning administrator and I said, is this what's going in there? And he said, absolutely not to his knowledge. It's my understanding that he wants to do apartments and he does want some commercial, he wants mixed use. But I've never heard him say anything about tiny homes or 15-minute cities, nothing like that. I mean, and I've been to every meeting. Haven't missed a meeting, haven't missed a planning commission, haven't missed a board meeting.
I believe you.
Am I allowed to speak again?
Sam is next.
Yes, I just want to reiterate, I share your concern of where you're coming from, but having attended these same meetings, I too have not heard anything particularly regarding this 15-minute city. And unless I hear otherwise, I just have to go with the information that I provided to me.
Go ahead.
Okay, the person's name is Brian Shire, that is the developer. And this has been going on for a year. The residents have consistently asked questions, presented questions, and he refuses to answer anything. And they find it very suspect that they cannot get any answers out of this person. And I believe the meeting that I went to, there was a group of Ontowa residents that every 3 minutes one would stand up and it was this long speech that they read. That's where they mentioned the 15-minute city. And now they changed the wording to walkabout.
But
So,
that's their idea. I mean, that's what they're saying. I haven't heard the developer say that. I haven't heard.
that's because he's non-existent. He doesn't come to the meetings. He won't answer any questions. If he would just come to the meeting and answer all the residents' questions,
Can I
maybe things
call a
would be
question
different.
And we get back to our business and not Ontowa Township?
Yeah.
Okay.
Matt.
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, I think to kind of
package a couple of things up here is that the whole point of this is to look at a letter of intent to submit to MDARD about whether we would be allowed to apply for a grant to look at a housing study. And the housing study would be looking countywide across multiple different facets. It'd be trying to focus on, are there areas where housing development could take place? What is the interest from the local townships, the village, the city? How do you approach this in a way holistically that everybody's gonna be behind? It's not about the county trying to say we're gonna do anything a certain way. I mean, if anything, we fully acknowledge the fact that planning and zoning is exclusive to the local units. They decide these things. So it's not about that at all. I mean, I can tell you that at the last leaders meeting, we actually had this offered up to us from a local unit that said, we really want to help this, we'll help you pay for it. Two of them. And so, you know, we know that from the local level, there is interest in this as well. There is no financial commitment as part of this letter of intent. Obviously, I think, you know, you would echo this sentiment, I think, if the application process goes through. Mark Van Buren would be looking to find out, you know, how do we approach that? Is it looking from you know, our private sector to help with workforce housing? Is it looking at those local units that were interested in this? It's not a commitment on the part of the county to say we're gonna put any sort of funding toward this at all. I mean, may that be a part of the question when we get to the application? Maybe. But, you know, we can approach that as we get there. And if you approve this now, even if we get the approval to apply, there's no requirement that says the county has to even go forward with applying either. You could say, you know what, actually, we don't wanna do this. I mean, so really, this is really just getting to the point of, can we even apply for it? It's something we can even
And
see.
more
I don't see the
options.
harm in that.
So before you go, Sarah, if you could answer,
Yes.
without our approval of this, because there's apparently some that don't want it, and in the public, am I right or wrong by saying if we don't approve this, the township can still do whatever they want to and overrule what the county wants or not wants to do?
In terms of the grant application or
Now,
in terms of housing?
the housing and
Yes.
the township can do whatever they want to and just overrule us. So this is
Yes.
just giving us more options and assisting the townships in their options as well, even though they don't really need our approval.
Correct.
And if
Okay.
anything, you could argue this is about making a plan that may intentionally ensure that you're not doing those things. I mean,
Yes.
what
Right.
does it mean to have housing in Cass County?
Right.
How do you approach? I mean, if that's a real concern and it's a concern shared by everybody, you can actually incorporate those elements to say, well, how do we focus on whether it's traditional housing or if we're looking at multifamily developments, what does that look like in Cass County? How do we approach that in a way that people would be supportive of? I mean, that's what the kind of questions that this would answer to.
And how do we
Go
build?
ahead, Sarah, you're on now.
Oh, thank you, and I apologize for
Yeah, you're
butting
good.
in earlier.
You're good.
And to that point, because I think a lot of, I think some words are being parsed differently. So I hear the concern about affordable housing that was brought up earlier.
She's gone.
She's gone. Okay. Perhaps a better word when we're talking about this is attainable. And I know sometimes people do gymnastics with words, but we're talking about is looking at what can Cass County residents actually afford? What do they need and what can they afford to pay? Because that helps scale housing development. We don't want houses that are being built in the community that only the wealthiest can move into. We want to make sure we're taking care of the full spectrum, and we're really talking about people who are in the workforce primarily. And just to speak briefly to the tiny homes thing, that was a bad example brought up by me.
I got shot down with that last week, so tiny homes are out of the question. That was
Yes.
just an example.
It's just an example, and ultimately it is up to the local level. That's an example that comes from other communities. If the study were to find that Cass County residents wanted tiny homes, which we would not expect because we don't see that happening here, it would be up to the townships to make those decisions. They're not allowable in most communities right now anyway, and so that would just continue.
Right.
The intention would not be for us to be advocating for this. It's just to develop information so that our communities, if they're interested in expanding housing, can make sure they're supporting the kind of housing that residents actually need and can afford.
All right.
So just for some understanding, this is a fact-finding mission to give more information to the townships to help better service their people.
Yes.
Something that needs to be kind of brought up is, so like, I'm an agronomist and I have a family farm, but we have an aging population in the county, and 80% of the people, at least 80, work outside of our county. We have to do something to keep our children here. So I honestly see that as one way to help sustain our community and a younger community.
I would agree. The thing we see is it's hard to keep young people in the community. It's hard to keep anybody in the community when
I've
there's
only
nowhere
had
to
one
live.
job personally inside this county, other than the military outside of the county, but other than that, I've always had to go to my whole family, Indiana.
Yeah, but for Mary's point,
Yeah.
the townships can say no. You know, so
Yes.
there's no guarantees on any of those things. I agree on some of that, but the township, we're not saying that can happen. We're just seeing what we can do to maintain our youth. That's what I'm seeing out of this.
All right.
And I'll just say, I mean, what we're looking at today is just a letter of intent, but if there's any real threat here, there's between today and the time that it actually gets through all the loopholes, or excuse me, through all the hurdles, if there is something there, then maybe take this time now to look at that.
We can always, like Matt says, nope, she lied to us, no.
But yeah, even
All
if
right.
we were to go through and you were awarded the grant, you can always turn it down as well. So this is a many months
And
process.
that comes through me, and I can consult with everybody prior
And
to.
actually, yeah, if the grant were awarded, we'd actually bring that to the whole board.
To the whole board?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I'm used
So,
to
yeah, I mean,
the.
there's multiple opportunities where if there was concerns, I mean, you could take a step back and say, no, we're not interested.
I'm used to the E-grams and there's a bunch of others out there that I sign. All right, ma'am, thank you.
Thank you all.
Any further discussion on it? So we're gonna vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
So that's an aye for opposed. All right. Motion passes. All right, next item. The big one. Number 1, 2, or 3. And so for that, we're not voting on that tonight at all because we can't. Because we have to have the public hearing and a few other statutory regulations that has to go along with that. So we're just saying which one are we going to push through for that process. Yeah, so I will open up the floor to who, unless you all want me to take the lead on which one I do, or the floor is open for your suggestions.
I just want to clarify, so we're not voting on it, but we're gonna push an option forward for the public
To be voted on afterwards,
Can I
yes.
speak on it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so essentially, what we really need to do is, we have to have a public hearing on a proposed budget. For us to have a final draft of a proposed budget, we need to kind of know which option is the proposed budget. So essentially, the plan would be if we, with a path forward tonight saying, this is the proposed budget, we would package that up, a copy has to go down into the clerk registrar's office for public inspection, the public notice, a period of, we have to put it in a newspaper in general circulation at least 10 days. Have to hold the public hearing, and then after the public hearing is held, that's when you can approve the budget. Now, there's no requirement that you have to approve it necessarily that night either, but those are the steps you have to take to be able to approve the budget.
Okay, so we're not voting on it tonight.
So we're not technically voting on it, but we're essentially as a board.
This is the
agreeing on
one,
something.
pretty much.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So tentatively, the public hearing will be set for
September 7th.
7th.
That would be the plan, if we have a clear path. Because you guys would know, I mean, when you look back at last year's budget, and we have cover sheets, and we have a couple different calculations that go into it, it's not obviously this that we would present. It's a little different format. But to be able to do that, we need to know which path we're taking.
As well as creating the following year's budget.
Yeah, and we would do the
Needs to be
fiscal year
done once
25
we know
one
which
as well.
one I'm following.
So, in the past, how have we, like when we vote for my position here, we do a secret ballot, So in the past, how have we done that? Go around the room and say 1, 2, or 3, and Monica adds them up, or do we vote on it? That way we can't vote on it. How does everybody want to approach this to get the accurate one pushed forward to move this on?
We can vote to move it to
1, 2, or 3.
September 7th. Yes, we can do that.
We can do
yes.
that, okay.
Yes.
So,
I would say you could approve to hold a public hearing on September 7th on, whichever proposal.
whichever proposal. And yours is number 2. That's what that one is the one I've been getting the most phone calls, the most emails, and I think the public here that spoke, that's the one that everybody is. So for as far as my vote, I want that one to go through for the one that county administrator has presented. Yes, sir.
I think really though, we do have 3 good options ahead of us, but I'm not sure that any one of them is perfect. I think any
Yeah.
one that we look at might need some adjustment. So simply saying 1, 2, or 3 may not really reflect, in my perspective.
Accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Floor is still open.
Well, I would say too, I mean, even if you have a proposed budget, say you said number 2 or whichever one you might like, you could still make adjustments. I mean, you could pass the proposed budget and say, we get to September 7th, you have your public hearing, you could say, okay, we're gonna pass this budget, but I'd like to make the following amendments or something. You can still do that. So, you're not necessarily locking anything in right now to say that's the end all be all. I mean, you could make minor adjustments and things as you would need to.
Or if I like,
major adjustments.
or if I like the one that they were speaking against, but wanted to adjust it to number 3, but adjusted it to where there is no cuts to the positions or vacancies. That one made the most financial sense, because my stance has always been, since I've been a commissioner, 0 cuts, and that includes the vacant positions as well. So Raven, I think, said leadership is either Raven or Sarah. Sarah did. I'll give her the proper recognition. So I think that would be the best leadership, is to stick to my guns and be an example for future leaders to stick to where there's no cuts. But I like number 3, but without the layoffs or cuts or whatever you want to call that. I don't like the C word.
I would, if I can, I would just say this, that I think, it was a long process this year, but we had great meetings with all of our departments and elected officials. I mean, I think we worked very hard to try to come to an administrator's recommended budget that, took everything into account and tried to find a clear path. And I think we've had several conversations with elected officials, and I think that there is a clear path that if that option was selected, you could put, some mandates in place too and say, we know that next year we want to do this, and we have these 2 policies we'd like to look at. We'd like you to do that. And I think that can actually be helpful and say, chart out a path, hey, this is a good step, middle ground solution, but this is what we need for next year, and we could all get started, in the next, month or 2 on how do we start those conversations and how do we
For
work
next year.
I mean, I think we've kind of maintained, even from the presentation on August 10th, that, we aren't in a situation right now where there's truly a financial crisis. I mean, we have a healthy fund balance. I mean, I think our concern has always been at looking 2, 3, 4 years down the line. If we don't take action, there could be significant challenges. But I think we've tried to craft a solution that was, kind of taking all of that into account, finding a good middle ground and saying, okay, we know this maybe isn't perfect, but we can continue to work towards this, and this makes sure that we're taking some of those, I think there's cuts in there from, even where we started. I mean, the first one was 3.4. The elected officials and department heads made a lot of cuts to get down to that 2.8, and we made some additional ones to get down to 1.28. I mean, I think that was a big effort to get there, and it is a good starting place, but obviously the decision was.
And we've been admonished a few times to let you do your job, because that's what you get paid for. So the option in that would be to pick yours. So, yes, sir.
Well, I agree that, I want to make sure that we focus on this year's budget. I do agree with Matt there, where we want to make sure that we're looking out ahead, and I do believe that there was more ideas brainstormed in 2. There was actually a few more ideas that were very well thought out that I think would make sense. So I would like to entertain that conversation, maybe not today, but at a later point, that how do we get ourselves in a better position for the upcoming years.
Yeah.
For the next budget.
Yeah,
That's
that's some
what-
great ideas that we really need to look at.
That's what a good leader would do in this position, is look ahead and be proactive instead of that reactive stuff that drives me nuts. All right, floor is still open. Mine's still the administrator. One more time.
No, you go ahead. I know what I'm gonna say, so.
I just want to throw it out there that, so looking at the option between option 2 and option 3, there's, and correct me if I'm wrong because my spreadsheet might be a little old, but a difference of roughly $1.2 million. Of that $1.2 million, the majority is made up over $900,000, which is split between the $500,000 that was transferred from the drug law enforcement CDEP account and then the positions that are being looked at this evening. The rest of that, whatever ends up being $300-something thousand, are just cuts that were made in other areas of the budget. But I really do think that for tonight, that's kind of where I want to focus, is those two particular items, the positions and the CDEP $500,000 transfer.
I agree with that. And then, that was, I liked, budget number 3. I do not want to see anyone lose their job. And I think that if we were able to put those jobs, actually, the 3 positions back in, is it 3 or 4?
Who are you talking about?
The positions that are,
There are
5,
that are
Not
not
filled.
vacant.
oh, there are 5 that aren't vacant.
Right.
Okay, so I would like to see those positions retained. And I think that we need to make sure that, especially like, I was very concerned last time when Carol said we were cutting a position that was 66% funded. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. And also, I think the sheriff should have been talked to. That's not how I like to do things anyway. So there's those, that's my opinion.
So with 3?
I would 3
3 without
without cuts.
without cuts.
And let me go further and say, the positions that aren't filled, like, if you come to us and say, we have a candidate for this position, we need this position, in the 13 years that I've been commissioner, we've never turned anybody down for a position. I can remember when we had a hiring freeze, and people came and said, we need these positions. They weren't turned down. That's what I would like to see.
So number 3, maybe number 3?
No, mine's 2.
2?
And I would like further clarification because I
Yeah.
want to make sure that the $500,000 that's being looked at for option 3 is not used as stabilization fund to balance the books, more or less. That if that money were ever to be touched, it'd be put to use in the much-needed improvements on the jail that we need to use.
The $500,000 doesn't come from the budget stabilization fund.
No, I'm saying, I know it's coming from the drug.
It's coming from the drug fund, but there is 400,000 in the budget. Well, there's more than 400,000 in the budget stabilization fund.
Well, are we bringing the 500,000 over just so that we get down to the balanced budget figure? Are we actually gonna use that money for the jail, or are we using that money for our books?
Okay, so wait, let me see if I understand that. So you're saying the second budget and using the $500,000 from the drug fund to balance that?
Matt, maybe you can help us out here.
I think you're
Okay.
saying that you think that the CDEP money should not be used to balance the budget, but to actually do some much needed improvements such as the duress system, the
Body scanner.
the
Yeah,
security.
Okay, I didn't understand that.
That's what you're
Okay.
saying, right?
Yeah,
That's what you're
and that's why I can't
Okay.
support option 3. However, I do want vacant positions to be eliminated right now. Only the vacant positions, and if those positions were truly needed, then we can discuss it on a one-by-one basis.
I'm sorry.
Can you elaborate on that, where
Do you
that
want
money
vacant
would
positions?
be allocated?
Vacant positions.
So, talking to Sam, I met with Sam earlier, so I kind of
Hold
knew
on.
his thoughts on this. So basically what Sam was saying, looking at option 3, we were talking about moving $500,000 over. I can kind of go into where that came from, or Matt can, due to it being a mutual discussion that we had together, due to not being able to cut is largely in those areas due to having to have people in those positions. But anyway, Sam didn't like the idea of it just to fulfill the budget, just because, to keep public safety running, but he actually wants to see that money used towards these much-needed sheriff improvements that we've talked about, and to make sure that they're staying with the sheriff and not just fulfilling, getting that budget balanced. So he just wants to make sure that money really is going to public safety.
Which it would be, correct? I mean, doesn't it have requirements on it anyway?
If we move 500,000, that could be used anywhere.
Yeah.
No.
The way it's set,
No, it
No,
has to be
it has to
used
be
for
used.
public safety,
Yeah, it has to
including
be.
the areas of.
So it would,
That's pretty broad, though. That's not
drugs. I mean, it
specifically.
can, well, I mean, it is broad. It technically can be used for any facet of.
'Cause there's already quotes for the
public
items that
safety.
need to be repaired.
Yeah.
That's now down to 300-something thousand.
Yeah, I'm saying you
There are
could look at, I mean, jail improvements could obviously be something that could cover, I mean, jail operations, road patrol, and you could use it for any public safety expense, but you couldn't, for example, transfer money from that fund and say, we're gonna, fund this other department that has nothing to do with law enforcement. You couldn't do that.
so it's kind of there to use on public safety.
Mhm.
We're just gonna make it so it's not just for the drugs, it's for public safety.
So,
I would note, traditionally, that fund has been used entirely for drug enforcement operations.
Right.
And I think we've clarified this with the county attorney, and there is flexibility to use it in other areas. And part of our rationale for that was looking at, wanting to try to make sure when you look at the mandated roles within the jail and kind of the emphasis on wanting to maintain, our core staff with, road patrol and things like that, there really wasn't gonna be a way to cut everything down, right, at least at this point. I mean, we're gonna need more time to look at this across the board,
So
but
this is opening that fund up so we can use it to help support that.
it was to try to,
Yeah,
to
but
try to help
public
make sure we were
safety-
avoiding major
No, I
cuts in
mean,
those areas.
right.
Public safety is so broad that money could be used.
Well, we would have to
Different
approve
areas.
it though, correct?
Can we, if we approve option 3?
Yeah, I mean, I would.
To transfer the money, we would ultimately have to approve that.
Yeah, we would have to approve it.
Because the board is the
The
fiduciary
transfer
of the
itself,
drug
but the
enforcement.
actual, where it gets spent is a different
anything
story
over
entirely.
$20,000 is going to require an approval
Oh,
from.
okay.
and everything that he
What's
needs.
the cost
is
of the
good,
3
right?
items that the sheriff needs done in the jail? Do you have
I
an actual?
do
thing
not
in it?
have those off the top of my head, maybe you do.
Do I get 3 minutes?
Yes.
2.5.
It's actually, if you go with the 3 items, it's around 600,000. But we do have a new quote for one item to reduce that, but there's 3 items in question.
And there is some grant funding too.
applications that the sheriff has
Yeah.
filled out, and I've reviewed those, I've
So we thought we were pretty close.
And the revenue, from the jail has gone down $100,000 since last year, because it's not being collected, brought in.
Well, that's kind of where I touched on several ideas that could help us put us in a better position for next year, and collecting inmate fees is one of them.
Yeah, we need
So
to do that
you're in favor of 3 then,
with some adjustments.
with some adjustments?
Yeah.
3, 2. We need to hear from the other
I
commissioners. We got-
ditto Roseanne's words exactly.
What was
So-
that?
Option 3, not take anybody's job.
Yes,
Okay.
Not taking anybody's job.
yes.
Anybody, including the vacant?
No.
No, just
They
those.
need to be ex-nayed, they need to come
Right.
to us for approval before hiring anybody.
Okay. Not take any currently filled positions.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Can I ask a clarification for you to discuss?
That's up to the
Just
board.
because you said
Anybody
some
get,
words that I want to be sure that we understand.
anybody got any objections to that?
No.
Please.
Not at all.
Just only because this is important as we go forward. When you say we have to come to you before we hire somebody, what you mean really is, we would have to come to you before we would post a position, because that's important in terms of the
Yeah,
legal
'cause you would do a
relevance.
budget adjustment
Yes.
in order to bring the
Right.
money into your budget.
No, I just want to be clear, because sometimes the things that are said here, some people take them literally, so
Yeah.
we wouldn't bring candidates to you, we would bring the position to you. No, and I'm not saying that to make fun of
Yeah.
you or to, but because sometimes the public doesn't know what that means. means, and legally, we would never bring candidates to you. We would bring a request to.
Right.
Because some of the open positions, and I wanted clarification of that because Roseanne said about the 66%, we've got empty positions in the front of the court. So you're saying in order to be able to post those positions, we would come to you and then we would make our case and then you would decide one at a time.
Yeah, because we
But if we had
don't know-
multiple ones, we could bring them on the same night, perhaps on the same agenda.
Certainly.
Okay.
And I want those
Just because we
discussions to
don't
be
know-
had here, not in committee.
Absolutely.
Hold on,
What's
one at a time,
necessary.
can you say that louder?
I want those discussions to be had here and not on some other new
In
committee.
a public
Yes.
forum, yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I know it's your decision, I just wondered.
So if I could, with option number 3 that was being discussed here, ma'am, with no cuts to existing and bringing those, would that be agreeable? You're the Chief Justice for our county, is that? Chief Judge. Yeah. That's twice I've messed your title
That's
up.
okay.
Is that something that would not hurt your department?
Well, I don't know because I don't know what the other dollar cuts were.
Right.
They've already significantly cut our training, and I can't agree, for
Right.
example, that we have to certify the people we need to certify, et cetera, and we had significant slashes, but I'm not saying that's a lot of money. But I mean, if we're gonna keep the positions we have to get them the credentials they need to be able to do the work we need them to do, so.
All right,
But anyway, in
Thank you.
concept, yes,
thank you, ma'am.
thank you.
So I could probably go around the room and say 1, 2, or 3, add it up,
Let's do it.
and, okay?
I just think the issue is it's not clear 1, 2, 3.
Right.
I think we're
Right.
in the between 2
Right.
and 3.
Yeah.
I have to speak because
Yeah, please.
I've talked to dozens and dozens and dozens and probably 200-300 people from my district. And they're like, look, I mean, now they don't see my side of it, so there are certain things that I agree with these people on that we need to change, but they want that fiscal responsibility at a 0. That's what they want. Now, I agree, I will not fire anyone. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I don't think that's the right thing by our employees. That is a horrible thing to do, to have these people terrified every year that they're gonna get fired, and as long as I'm sitting here, I wouldn't do that. I would not do that, at least so those people can feel safe in their jobs. When it comes around, I'm not gonna say, well, you're fired.
Yeah, whoops. All right.
Yeah, no, so,
Right.
but there has to be some work between the people that we represent and meeting with our other elected officials. Now, I feel like that was not done very well this year, and that's my mistake. I'm gonna take some of that because I'm learning. But I do feel going forward that our budget needs to be discussed a lot more, and we need to be a lot more involved, and the elected officials need to be a lot more involved in giving some clarification.
So can we, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, so I would
Yeah,
like
go
to
ahead.
see that we don't fire anyone.
Mhm.
I'd like to see discussion on the positions that are open as far as removing those. And when it comes to the sheriffs, I say the sheriffs, but when it comes to the CDEP money, maybe having that just be to what it would cost to fix the jail, or at least make sure that that was clarified to them. So as far as working with other commissioners here, that money is clearly going to fixing the issues within the jail.
Yes.
And I think we can at least garner some support, I'm hoping, from the sheriff on that.
Yeah.
That's,
So it's not really a choice between 2, because there's some questions between 2 and 3 and adjustments between both of them.
yeah,
You know?
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
2.5 then.
Well, that would require
We
going
can
back
call
to the
it
drawing
2.5.
board, yeah. Unless we can figure that out tonight.
Honestly, if we can get a clear path as to, take this one, add this, or take this one, remove that, we can create a proposed budget and have that and go forward.
Tonight?
Any budget is just a plan.
Yes.
Right.
It can be revised
It
again
can be,
before we
right.
ultimately have to vote on it.
Exactly.
and elected officials can ask for more, like that's the thing too.
Budget amendments are a beautiful thing.
They can ask and we can give it to them. I mean, so that, like they said, that money is there for a reason. It can be given out if it's asked for, and I'm more than willing to listen.
Yeah, me too. And we make budget adjustments right along.
Constantly.
Right, all the time.
Who does? Go ahead.
Just a thought, because I know it's kind of hard between 2 and 3, so the biggest differences are CDET in positions. So maybe instead of saying you want to vote for 2 or 3, you guys all talking about how you feel about the CDAP money and going around and trying to get a consensus, and then maybe talking about those positions and getting a consensus.
That's a great idea.
Because if we have to adjust whatever, we can call that budget whatever you want. But I think those are your main differences, and that's what you guys have to find a common ground on, not picking a 2 or a 3, but it's really about those 2 things that I think you guys need to come to an agreement on. And so maybe if you guys figure out how you guys each feel about the CDAP money and come to an agreement on that, and then the positions, it will make it pretty easy.
So if we start with one of those,
Yep, start with maybe like.
start with one,
Let's start with the CDAP.
start with the CDET,
Yeah.
figure that out,
Yeah,
and then move to the positions.
yeah.
So
And
do we
then-
have it highlighted what this, the 500,000 is going towards or where it's being used?
That's their question.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm,
yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds like what they're asking.
yeah,
At
yeah.
least if you want my support, and it sounds like Sam's support, it would be nice to have clarification so that we can show that that's what it went to. And then it helps solidify it more that, look, that's used for the protection of the people, that's what it's going to. It's going to secure our jail more. And it gives more clarification, I think.
I think going around and asking
Yes.
everybody is the right thing to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so what do you want to do with the CDET?
I would just like it to be to the cost of those. Now, granted, whatever that cost is, it sounds like if it ends up being more, but at least we're meeting somewhere where we're saying, look, that money is going to taking care of the jail. Because the jail needs it, those people need it.
Got it.
They do a great job, they need to have that additional security.
Roseanne?
Okay, so the way I feel is the CDET money should be used to do the repairs in the jail. And Sheriff, you said 3?
Yes.
Okay. The 3 repairs in the jail.
Sam?
Same.
Ryan?
I'm sticking with 3, not cutting any jobs, but no formal talks have happened about what these repairs are and what they're gonna cost, so we have no end number to even base anything off of.
All right.
So we shouldn't keep talking about the 500,000 in the budget to be used for those projects when we don't have a final cost.
What are the 3?
So, yeah, what are the 3? Who are we gonna ask, the sheriff or Jen?
Security system.
What, say that again, scanning?
Security system, duress alarm, and body scan.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was.
So the whole point in us working really, really hard and getting that $1.5 million from the federal government was to put a bunch of money back in public improvement, which would be the money you'd want to use for projects in the jail.
And did he say the scanner, the body scanner?
Or any other public improvement project.
Well, plus, hopefully they'll get some grants for that too.
Yeah, they've got to apply for them.
That's why I said what I said about the 500,000 that's highlighted
Yeah.
in the budget. Show us where the money is being used. That seems to me that'd be a better answer to their question that they're
Yeah, a
getting.
safety, that it's held for.
We have parameters where that money can be used, so you
Yeah,
check with the county.
there's
attorney.
already, you can only use the money for certain things anyway.
Right, but at least for clarification purposes, I'd like to just, hey, look, we pulled X amount of dollars equal to 300, let's say it costs $360,000 to do these 3 things. We pulled that out there, that's what, we can justify the purpose. So
You agree with them, Joyce?
But then it's tied to that. What if they need it for something else that has to do with another, safety or
That could be a future agenda.
situation?
That's a budget adjustment.
That's where I'm getting at.
We can look at
The
that.
500,000 that's budgeted in this budget is not specific to projects. Am I correct in saying that?
You are correct.
So therefore, if you want that money to be set aside for those projects, you gotta come up with another 500,000 from somewhere else to replace it back in the budget.
That or technically play where you talked about taking money back
Right.
out of capital and.
So what I'm trying to say is those projects aren't specifically budgeted because they're public improvement projects. So once you get to the point of having the quotes go through the
Then we
capital
can-
project committee, then it comes to the board for a vote, then we would figure out how to,
Yeah, then
Matt
we-
would recommend where we pay for it out.
Yes.
Yeah, then we would recommend.
Yeah.
Right.
Things. Meanwhile, it's sitting there only to be used for a specific project, and we would have to approve it anyway. So,
All right.
but
Jim, you're next.
Well, I'm kind of a little confused on it. I came in with
I was thinking about number 2, but I would recommend the administrator's
All right, number 2.
recommendations.
Mary?
I don't want to see anyone lose their job, you know, especially the mandated positions, and it would devastate us if sheriff could not fill his positions because security is number 1. So, I guess, and through this discussion, I got kind of confused, so the admin budget does not cut, or it's number 3 that does not cut?
No, number 3 cuts, it's the admin, but we say number 3 with no cuts.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's what they're
So
saying.
then I'll go with the admin, no cuts.
That's the 2.
That's number 2. I'm sorry, Commissioner Locke, what was your
Number
answer?
3 with no cuts.
Number 3 with no cuts to fill positions only?
Yes, but, you know, they can come.
And request
Yes,
for vacant.
request for the
Yeah, okay,
vacancy.
thank you.
Because that's what was the consensus over here.
Okay.
I guess that leaves up to me, no pressure, huh? I'm to the idea of number 3 with 0 cuts, and with the other vacancies, what we agreed on, that they come to us and we can fill them as needed. Then we can add it up and move on. Yes, please.
I'm sorry. So what if an employee leaves? Do we have to come to the board
Oh.
and request that
If it's a
position?
No.
budgeted position, somebody leaves and then it's filled, you would not need to.
No.
do that.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right, sorry,
No.
thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll make a recommendation that that is filled by the same job title at the same pay scale and not something much higher.
Yeah, that's
You want
a,
that in the
But that's a
minutes?
recommendation.
we got a separate committee for that, though.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hold on.
no,
We
Yeah.
we also talked about, I mean, and this is of course up to the board, but we also talked about, you know, at one time about the idea of looking at bringing back like a vacancy review sort of a
Mhm.
setup and looking
Yes.
at each department, you know, kind of holistically too. So
And we've done
that
that.
could be an option
Yeah.
Yeah.
for
Yeah, that's what I
new
was
positions
gonna.
that become vacant if the board sees fit to do so.
all right.
Yeah.
So what was
That's
the
what I
other
was
one?
say.
We had the CDET, so the next one was the position, so we already did both.
Yeah.
All right,
So, do you want me to go through my
please,
list? Okay.
because I,
So, the majority is budget 3 with no cuts to currently filled positions. Vacant positions come to the board for approval. And it looks like the CDET money with specific allocation to the 3 jail projects, not just open to anything.
Do you need those jail projects?
I have
Okay.
over here,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
That is the majority.
all right. So that's just,
I mean, if we move 500,000 and it comes in at 300 something, what do we do with the
that goes
balance?
back in the CDET?
It wouldn't be moved until it's time for those.
So we wouldn't move it
projects
all,
to be
yeah.
completed, and we
Okay.
could move it over into the public improvement, and then it's paid out of the public improvement, just because that's where we keep all the capital stuff. But you wouldn't make those transfers until it was time, if you were looking to do that just for those specific projects. There's no reason to move that money at that time, and if it gets mixed in with all the other one, that's silly. And then Ryan, to your point, if you didn't like all that extra money sitting in there, because a lot of that money that was sitting in public improvement, if you wanted to potentially move that just back out into the general fund rather than it sitting in there, you could do that, or just save it for other projects, or, but I just wanted to remind you that you've talked about you could move it both ways. And so while you're talking about freeing up some of that balance for those sheriff's projects to see that money, you know what I mean, you can move that back too. So I don't know if that helps you
I mean, you
feel a
could
little bit
essentially,
different about it.
Move money from, you know, move it from CDET to, and then move that money out of public improvement. You could kind of do both.
But anything over 20,000 being spent needs board approval.
Mm.
If they
Absolutely.
find anything under 20,000 that they can deem public improvement, then that money can be spent.
Public improvement, is only for $20,000.
I mean, of course, only with whatever's contained within the budget as well. You can't exceed budget expenditures without board approval either.
Still, that leaves $100-something that can be picked at nickel and dimed away.
No, it has to be $20,000 or more. if
Yeah.
it's
That's
all
what
public
signifies a public improvement project.
Oh.
Yeah.
20,000.
So
Okay.
anything that gets paid out of there comes to you
Yeah, I
guys,
mean,
but it makes no sense to move that money ahead of
That'd
time.
be terrible.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think we already know that, like, the restrictions with that fund would require it to be spent on law enforcement in some capacity.
Okay, yeah, thank you for clarifying. I just get concerned with using such a broad term when we have 3 quotes already.
I hear you.
All right, so we've got a majority there, so if we can have Monica give that to Matt, we got one more. Yes, sir.
Just a clarification, you are still cutting a road deputy in the corrections office?
No,
Yes, you are. They're
We are.
positions.
Yeah.
So you're still cutting, just for clarification.
How many vacancies do we have on the road currently right now?
2 in general fund,
Total, how many people are we short on the road is my truthful
2 in the
question.
general fund.
The one that was taken out of 101-301, which is Sheriff's Department, was actually a detective position. There is an open
Well,
position
that's-
for detective under CDET. So since that one was vacant, that was the one that was used, one of the 2. Also, the other one is not a corrections officer. It is one of, because there has to be 23 between sergeants and corrections officers, it's one of the 4 office assistants or managers or whatever their titles may be.
That would have been great to know before today, because nobody talked to me about it. And that would be a layoff.
Oh.
Not with them not taking away positions.
yeah, we're not doing any layoff.
We
No.
don't want any layoffs. No.
Zero.
There's no layoffs.
So that would mean we would keep
I'm
5.
just saying that
people.
all those
We would keep
positions are
5.
full as far as clerical.
Yep, so then
Yes.
we would keep
Yep.
5 and
That
not
too.
4. We would keep
Yep.
So in
5.
this case, it
That
was
too.
steady.
And if the sheriff, if you need those positions, you bring them to us and then we say yes, and then we adjust our budget accordingly. When you tell us that you need those
So
positions.
the 2 vacant positions I was referencing are the 2 detective positions. We're currently fully staffed as far as road, general fund road positions.
All right,
And those are
So
not
wait.
being-
we gotta pause and
I'm
let our clerk
sorry.
catch up.
Okay, so we clarified, it wasn't a jail corrections officer, it would have been a clerical position, and because that's filled, it was clerical, so that
Yeah.
will not be cut.
That won't be cut, no.
The detective position is vacant.
But there's a, yeah.
And just to clarify too, I mean, we understand that in a lot of cases here, the budget that's allocated for any office or department is a dollar value. So we can't necessarily say that it has to be this position or that position. I mean, you can look at those as rough guidelines as to what you think that would be. We estimated which positions we thought it might be, or give a rough idea, but, I mean, each department or office would be tasked with determining what their staffing levels are. If they can say, well, I want to reduce this budget, and we can still retain this position or something, I mean, that is something that could have happened, so, you know, we were not trying to contemplate necessarily specific positions wherever we could. I mean, we were trying to put in some sort of a placeholder to say, what do we think it could be, and give some estimates about what that could be. Each office is responsible for determining their staffing needs within the budget that's provided by the board.
So it's the dollar amount equivalent to that of a
Position.
detective,
Yes.
1 detective,
Yes.
correct? Will be eliminated from the budget. Equivalent. Okay. Thank you.
But if he has,
Yeah,
but if he has a candidate,
Concern.
then they bring it,
But he can come and ask for approval to reinstate the
yes.
Yes.
position.
Yes.
yes.
That way, nobody's job is in jeopardy and we're not neglecting our public safety. That's important that we get that
And
down.
it should be clarified that
Yes.
they can ask for amendments. We will
Yes.
talk.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, we do.
Yeah, we already,
Adjustments.
Yeah.
Just one note, with the MIDC grant, we did get approval, we talked about this a little bit previously, but the MIDC grant was approved. In that, it would contemplate hiring a management of assigned council position. That would be fully funded by the city.
Yes.
So we would plan to have that position,
Yep.
but it would not come out of the county budget
No.
in that regard.
Yeah.
And, I guess I just would ask, do we want to look at a vacancy review, committee of some sort, or, it sounded like, I think you were saying you wanted.
I'd rather talk about it here.
Yeah, me too.
Okay,
yes?
Want to talk about it here,
okay.
Either
In
in
the
the tower or
meeting.
in a board meeting.
in the meeting.
Oh, yeah,
Sure.
not here today, but in a cow or
Yeah.
board meeting. Sam,
I just want further clarification, excuse me, on the vacant positions. It is in the sheriff and the court. Was that the two departments?
I mean, it's more than that.
It's
I
more
mean,
than that.
There's five
Vacant
vacant
positions,
positions,
I mean,
right?
animal control, I know, had a request for 2 positions that, to be added. Those would not be, included with the option number 3, because those would, without, or with vacants, because those would be vacant
They're
positions
vacant
now.
now, right.
But I mean, I think you're saying that those could be brought forward to say,
Yes.
hey, there is a need for this, et
Yes.
cetera. So I know that was one.
We have a person, there's a need.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what was
2
budget
vacant
adjustments?
positions were from the administration office. I don't know for sure that we would look to fill
Yeah.
either of them, but,
But,
if we felt that there was a need, we could bring that.
You would bring that to the board
yeah,
and not do it, nobody would do it in secret or behind closed doors. And we have said that anytime it comes to the budget or hiring or anything, it's coming before the board. No more of that other past stuff, right?
So maybe
Yeah.
start that today?
Do we need to, say that again?
Are you gonna start a motion to start that today, or do you start?
What's that,
it
the
as of a
vacancy,
certain
or-
day that no one's hired until it's ran through the board?
I was just
Yeah.
gonna ask that.
Yes, but I think, we've got the committee of the whole coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Put
we
it
can
there.
put The agenda for the committee of the whole.
Put it
And-
there.
Yeah,
A motion
Well,
for what?
they can still fill any, if someone leaves and they have a currently budgeted.
That's right.
Then we don't need to come to the board.
There's
No,
no
she's talking
new
about as
positions.
of,
Right.
Yeah.
starting now, any vacancies.
yes.
So
Cannot
Monica
be
needs
filled as of
clarification
starting
of
now.
what we're gonna put on the, yeah, I get it. But this, your role is second
I wanna
most
get this
important,
right.
yes.
Okay,
So we're gonna put on the cow that we're gonna start from that point on, or that
right,
any new position
right.
is gonna come before the board.
Any newly created?
Any newly,
Well,
cr-
some of these vacant positions are not.
Yeah.
To
Like
fill
the-
the positions that are being cut from the budget that are currently vacant. To
Yeah.
refill those positions, it must be brought forward.
Oh,
that,
sure.
that,
Any
yes.
new one.
And any,
Any position?
I have positions that are vacant that aren't being cut. So what does that mean?
If they're not
Only
being
because you're in
cut,
a
then you
position-
just
Are
fill
they being
them.
cut in the budget?
That means you can fill them, Sheriff.
Yeah, if they're not being
Yeah.
cut, you just fill them.
But I just want you to realize, you're still cutting law enforcement. You're still cutting it. Even though it's vacant, you're still cutting it. Just be aware.
Okay, so you're only gonna have the positions you're cutting come to the board?
Yes,
Not all
Yes.
positions?
yes,
Correct.
just positions cut, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Only cut positions that they want to post?
Right,
Okay.
Which are vacant.
which are vacant.
Could I get another clarification? I'm sorry, but.
Yeah,
I
might as
said
well.
legally, I need this clarification.
might as well.
Okay, and I want to note this for the record because you don't like me to say it, but
Courts are a separate branch of government, and all that was provided to me was numbers and areas where I was told, we know where our vacant positions are. So you're saying that the vacant positions we have, that before we would advertise for them or post them, we would come and say, may we? But that's all we're talking about. We're not talking about any other positions.
Yeah,
Correct.
correct.
I think we're just talking about these 5 vacant positions.
Because
not
I-
every vacant position.
Not every vacant
These 5
position.
vacant.
Only the ones.
The 5s that were on the chopping block for the quote-unquote balanced budget.
Right,
Yes.
that's it.
Yes.
Okay.
what about the other ones that are in there that are vacant? that are-
Because, and the reason I ask this clarification, because it's important for us to understand, all of us, to work together with admin. I've got other vacant positions that were included in the budget. So, and so does sheriff and so do other people. For example, my JPO, my juvenile probation officer position's open right now. I've held off on posting it because I wasn't gonna advertise for somebody if we were gonna end up laying off people. That wouldn't be, in my opinion, ethically right. So, but that would be a position I wouldn't have to come say, may I post it, because
Right.
it wasn't proposed to be
Right.
cut,
Correct.
right? Okay, and I'm sorry to ask this several times, because I've heard people saying different words up here.
It is.
I heard people say that, well, moving forward, we're not doing anything in secret, we're coming here for positions, only certain positions, right?
Yes.
So
Okay,
that
thank
means we're
you.
not cutting anybody from law enforcement.
Thank
You keep saying we are.
Nah.
That's not correct either. I am part of law enforcement, and there are cuts that will happen in my office.
Yeah.
I'm the chief law enforcement officer of the county, and I just mentioned too, on the CDET budget, along with the sheriff, I just mentioned, again, I'd hate to go back that 20 years ago, but 20 years ago, I was one of 3 elected officials that worked all summer to get that millage passed. Part of my budget is through that too, so I would certainly appreciate in the future, when there's discussions about the use of CDET money, that I be included in that conversation as well. The sheriff certainly needs to be in there.
Yeah.
Let's make that a two-way street.
Yeah, all right.
When money's spent out of that fund, you guys should consult us. Because we're the chief fiduciary of that fund.
And we always have.
All right.
Now we reimburse the city of Dowagiac for a detective vehicle at a 100% rate.
Easy.
Yes.
$23,000.
Yes, it's part of CDET.
Right. But anything over $19,999.99 has to be approved by this board.
We approve all vehicle purchases by this board.
Okay.
So we're moving that forward to, we're done with the public comments, and we're gonna move something forward to the cows. This will go on forever and beat a dead horse.
I've
We've
only
got
commented once. I do have
clarification.
one other
One more time, yes, sir.
Thank you. So are you saying that when it comes to, if you're going to number 3, that includes the employee cuts to number 3 and the vacant positions?
What?
No,
What?
we don't want to eliminate jobs.
No positions
The
are
vacancy
cut.
ones, we're just asking you to come to us.
All right.
That's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
That's it.
Appreciate the clarification.
Very good, Joyce.
We will craft a
Yeah.
new
List of
proposed
those
budget and a list of those and send that out.
And that's what's gonna go on to September 7th.
Yes.
Yes.
And I also want to ensure that the count states not just those, but any new position going forward. Any newly created position in the future.
Newly created.
It's not all vacancies.
That, will that be separate from,
That.
that's be separate?
Yeah.
In addition,
Yeah.
Yeah,
above and beyond anything
Yeah.
that's in this budget
yeah,
No department should grow without approval.
yeah,
of the board.
because that's separate from what we did, but yeah,
So
put that on
basically,
the
any
cow.
position that isn't, if it's not refilling a position that was already filled, if you're adding any role,
Right,
even if it's the same position, but if you're adding anything that wasn't already previously occupied role, that would come before the board, is what you're saying.
good.
Okay.
All right. Monica, you earned that money today, well, I tell you,
We all did.
I appreciate it.
We all did.
Anything else for the,
Are you going to be caught up?
I appreciate that.
any,
Thank you.
any additional before I slam this gavel? We are out of here. Adjourned.